as the lockdown continues, we all get continuously challenged to apply our principles of patience, of what do we really control, and of living in the present, which I spoke about a few weeks ago. As we get pushed further into lockdown, though, a lot of people are really beginning to struggle with the feeling of powerlessness and the feeling of so much outside of their control. It's one thing for us to take the Stoic approach and say, only worry about what you are actually in control of. But it's another thing to say, how do I deal with what I'm not in control of? Right now, like other times in life, we encounter situations that we aren't in control of and that seem to be more than we can bear. Things that push us past our usual limits and our usual sense of possibility. It's often a situation like this where you have a situation outside that you're not in control of. Sometimes it might be something that's been building and building and building, but either way, we finally feel overwhelmed. We suddenly feel that our usual ways of coping are useless and our usual strategies are useless. And ultimately, we feel like we have been brought to our knees in some way. And it is at that moment, being brought to our knees, that we can surrender and ultimately change the experience completely. One of the ways that our strategies often work is to concentrate on the positive, concentrate on the possible, avoid the negative emotions and the ambiguous possibilities and focus on what's likely to be the real outcome. And we often go around avoiding the negative as much as possible. In fact, we've got a culture that really emphasizes focus on the positive, you need the positive, and so on. And very often the result of that might be that we don't really know how to handle the negative. It's almost like we become allergic to anything that might be negative in some way, and we become defensive and angry about it. And in the end, we kind of don't know how to deal, don't know how to go forward, or should I stop, or should I retreat, because the negative has become so unfamiliar to us, and we get into a state of anxiety. You also have the situation that we end up persevering for its own sake, the kind of positivity that says, keep on pushing and keep on trying. And while there are many times in life where perseverance is important, sometimes it can be problematical, especially since it's often based on fear of what might happen if I don't. We hang on to people, we hang on to things, we hang on to things that we're doing because it's what we know, even though it might no longer serve us in any kind of way. And it would actually be wiser at that point to actually stop, to actually surrender. Surrender might be a good way instead of persevering in many situations. We all know what it's like to be pushed by the same issue all the time, no matter how we ignore it, no matter how we persevere and persist in trying to fix it, and the issue just won't go away. And resistance often strengthens whatever it's trying to oppose by giving it power and energy and all of that. We need to push, so it's a strong thing, and it becomes stronger. So our resistance and our persistence, while appropriate sometimes, can actually make the thing that we are fighting harder to fight. Think of the lockdown. We resist, persist, we pursue alternative theories, we insist that we're being controlled. We find all of these ways of not dealing with the simple facts, and the more we push against it, the more we feel oppressed, the more angry we become, the more locked down we feel, the more we identify all the tiny things that are wrong with the government and wrong with the lockdown and wrong about the whole situation, and we literally start empowering the very thing that we are resisting. The first thing we need to do is accept what we fear. We need to learn surrender. Surrender is something that is really in all spiritual paths. It's the way of opening up to the divine. We've got ego and intelligence, and we're trying to control our own lives. We've got all of these things which make us want to feel in charge of our lives. And many spiritual paths say, well, you aren't in charge, and trying to be in charge narrows everything down to your small awareness and to your small consciousness and to your small amounts of control. We actually need to surrender in order to open up to the divine. Surrender is, people say, oh, you need to let go. It's often oversimplified in that kind of a way. We often are still not really letting go because we've still got our minds. Our minds are giving us reasons and telling us why it's still going to be good for us in the end. And in the end, we actually lose the quality of surrender, the spiritual quality and the emotional quality that it gives us, because we still allow our minds to play too much part. The spiritual paths say the more you surrender, the more you experience love. The more you experience love, the more you surrender. The end is that you open yourself to the divine, you become a kind of a conduit or receptive to the divine will or the inspiration of the divine or the revealed truth of the divine. In the end, you get a sense of peace. Surrender, though, isn't only for the spiritual path. Surrender isn't a strategy itself. It's an abandoning of all strategies. It's the point that we recognize there is no strategies. And in fact, that is potentially quite a profound realization. It's a realization that strategy doesn't always work, that I'm not always able to fix it in some way. And very importantly, when we don't know. Surrender can only happen when we know that we don't know. We know that we cannot find our own way through. We don't know where we are. We don't know how to get out of here. We don't have the answers. It could be exactly how you're feeling right now, but you need to surrender to that. You need to stop looking for the answers. A challenge, because as you can see from all the conspiracy theories and fake news all the time, people are desperately looking for answers and people are desperately feeling out of control. We need to acknowledge, I don't know, I have no answer, I have no out, and that is okay. I surrender. In the end, with that surrendering, all we do know is that I can't do it this way. I can't carry on in this way. The way that I've been doing it thus far, the way that I've been coping thus far, whatever it may be, doesn't work anymore. Surrender happens when it can't not happen. It's the only thing left. It happens when it's ready. So when you say, how do I surrender? Well, there might be things we can do to kind of help ourselves go there, but surrender itself is easy. It's really, it's the acknowledgement, the discovery, the acceptance of complete loss of control and allowing that loss of control to take us away. Getting to that point is difficult. Accepting that we have to get to that point is difficult because our mind struggles that there's got to be a way, there's got to be a better solution, there's got to be. So the path to get to surrender is very hard. But the actual surrender, when it does come, is easy. We just literally experience a profound sense of relief. And there is a clue to the power of surrender in that. It doesn't matter that we are not in control. We don't even have to have a sense that something else is in control. We just feel a profound sense of relief when we realize it's not up to me. I don't have to fix it. And I don't have to worry about if anyone else is going to fix it. Because surrender unmistakably still requires that kind of living in the present. if we're starting to project forward as to what will happen once this is over, and if I surrender, then it will lead to this, well, we're defeating our own purpose in that way. So it's not about the situation getting better, it's not about the situation going to get better. It is just that complete moment of not knowing, of not fixing, of not controlling, of knowing that it is not up to us. And that is such an important realization. We don't have to be the one to fix it. We don't have to be the one to figure it out. And by it, I don't necessarily mean a big global or national crisis. I mean in our own lives, whatever it is that is making us feel that sense of needing to persist, needing to resist, needing to overcome the negative. When we realize that I don't actually have to fix it, I don't have to employ any of those methods, I just have to completely surrender. The moment of surrender is sometimes called grateful defeat, because we get clarity and something inside us relaxes when we acknowledge that we don't know how to do something, what the way forward is. Our culture always is so focused on finding solutions, on taking charge, on being responsible, all of which are very important things. But like I said, at the wrong time, they will increase the problem, not relieve us of the problem. And sometimes the discovery that I don't know, I don't have to know, it's not up to me, relieves us of a whole bunch of anxiety, because it relieves us of a whole bunch of things that were never in our hands in the first place. Carrying unnecessary baggage, pushing against something that had infinite power to push back, because it was never in our power to push it out of the way in the first place. The amount of energy released back to us when we stop pushing against an immutable force is profound in itself. And while some think that, the surrender is like the spiritual surrender to something greater than me, I'm going to suggest that, well, that is about our spiritual lives. And it might be involving your belief system about this time or anything else. But that isn't the point of surrender outside of that spiritual context. The point of surrender is being okay with no knowledge and no control. Not the stress or the expectation that might come along with the belief that someone or something else is in that control. It may or may not be, but surrender is such a complete letting go that we literally don't know, and it's okay to not know. We give up the notion that we should know. We give up the notion that we should manage the situation. It's being okay with not managing. If you fall down in a pile of tears and then stand up again, instead of having to justify the tears or say, no, I need to be more positive than that, or any of the above, strategies don't apply, remember. So it's just being okay with not knowing, with not managing, with not being in control, surrendering to the feeling of not knowing and not controlling. As much as we are conditioned in such a way that we should never give up, when we give up to surrender, it is profound relief that we get in return. We get relieved also from having to worry about the results of our actions. We learn to accept things whenever we don't get those reactions. We surrender to the outcome because we're not in control necessarily of the outcome when there is something that's working towards an outcome. But mostly it teaches us to live back in the present. When everything that we do and everything that we say and everything that we read is not about the future, controlling the future, or getting a certain result, we're able to step into the present and experience this moment as it is. We've been in lockdown for something like 5 weeks, and it's a little bit like many of us haven't actually experienced the lockdown. We've been distracting ourselves. We've been fighting about it. We've been going on the internet and researching all sorts of cures and theories about viruses as if we've all suddenly become doctors. And of course, fixing the virus isn't in your hands, even if you think you found the magical reason of what it's all about. All of those things have effectively stopped us from experiencing lockdown. We've pushed against it, and it's pushed right back. We've resisted and persisted, and it's resisted and persisted right back, because clearly it's not going anywhere. So, as I say, once we completely surrender, then we will actually experience what it is like to not have the power to go out there and do your life, to not have the power to be in control, and to not have the power of knowing where does this end. There are many, many lessons in this lockdown, as we know. There are many lessons, not only in the lockdown, but in the profound challenge and trauma that the world is experiencing and our country is experiencing. But no matter how many pundits say X, Y, and Z, no matter how much logically we know must be true, we still don't know what the outcome is. We actually don't know what the outcome is. We've just got ideas and theories and strategies, all of which prevent us from surrendering and prevent us from experiencing the profound relief of not having to know. Because after all, if there isn't any clear knowledge in the end, if the only way you're ever going to know is by getting there, then all that time spent developing and pushing and fighting with your theories is wasted time, increased anxiety, increased resistance, and less relief. So remember that the fight itself produces anxiety. The anxiety of the lockdown is not the lockdown itself, it's the mind with all the what ifs, what does it mean, and what will be the outcome, and what does this do to me, and all of those things are the things we need to let go of in order to surrender. Just to be present, just to be sitting there, saying, I don't know, there's nothing I can do. I don't have to go on social media. I don't have to learn a foreign language. I don't have to do any of those things. I'll just sit here not knowing. It's not complacency. It's not the same as depression can produce in people sitting there doing nothing. It produces a feeling of aliveness. When we realize I'm not in control of anything, and I'm not in control of this moment, we start feeling an aliveness. We discover surprise. We discover mystery. We discover that by not being in charge and by not knowing what our imagined future is, we're living a more honest life because, honestly, we never did. The reason we're so traumatized by change and by surprises like this is because it goes against our expectations of what's going to happen. But if you think about it, we never knew what was going to happen, and everything was always possible, not just the outcome we thought. Terrible things and good things are possible every day, whether or not there's a known situation going on. Surrender actually causes us to live more honestly and more truthfully to what the world really is. And that is a profound experience. It's beyond relief. It actually gives us a kind of willingness to embrace life rather than a surrendering by falling back on the couch. That's the difference. By not knowing anything, we become open to every possibility, and every possibility, good or bad, becomes equal. When we acknowledge that we can't control everything, we give ourselves the opportunity to actually feel the flow of life, carrying us in all these different places. We learn that we don't also have to trust that everything's going to work out okay. That's another, perhaps even more subtle way that we try and control the future. Because trust is saying, I know that it's going to work out well, and you don't know that. You don't know anything. So the great thing about surrender is that it doesn't require trust. It doesn't require any kind of expectation whatsoever. That's what makes it so amazing. We surrender because we have to, not because we trust some kind of outcome. And surrender doesn't require that trust. When we finally let go of that control and acknowledge that we absolutely know nothing at all, the most amazing opportunity arises. The opportunity is to directly experience life, to directly experience the larger knowledge that is not, nature or the divine itself, an experience which we struggle to know. Many people might argue that the reason why things like these kind of viruses happen are because we're so out of touch with nature. We're so out of touch with how the world really works. So does getting in the touch mean you've got to go and sit in the forest and tune into nature? Nature is trees and birds and animals. Nature is everything. It is those things, and it's a good idea to go and sit in the forest. But that's not how we get in touch with nature. How we get in touch with nature is allowing the truth that nature is in control, that we're not, that there is a greater wisdom or a greater process or a greater meaning that might have nothing to do with us individually, but certainly something that we might and probably will never know individually. And as much as that sounds like lack of knowledge and a darkness in a lack of knowledge, it isn't that at all. It's the profound relief that comes from not knowing and allowing nature to take charge, and the assumption, and making the assumption that everything that nature does is exactly the right thing to happen. And so surrender can give us an aliveness and an attunedness that literally doesn't exist in any other way for the human being. After all, the evidence is there in all the other creatures that surrender, that don't question, and that generally don't experience unhappiness. Surrender doesn't always require these big things, these big scary moments. Sometimes we can just surrender into whatever is going on right now. Right now it is one of those moments. But in each aspect of our lives, and within this bigger thing, in the everyday things, in the everyday situations, as you try and negotiate this time, it's trying to find the surrender point in every one of those moments. The point really is to let go of our immediate experience of what we think and what we feel and the processing of it, and just feeling life as it is, trying to get the mind out of the picture, trying to get it not explaining, manipulating, controlling. The present moment is alive with infinite possibility once you let go of the idea that it's going over there, or it should go over there, or that I'm trying to make it go over there, or I need this outcome. If you surrender completely to the moment and the process that is not in your hands, any outcome is possible, and every outcome is possible. You don't know which, but it must mean they're all good. We so often talk about aligning ourselves with the flow and aligning ourselves with nature, and it is only by surrendering that we can do that, because only by surrender do we experience the unknowable, do we experience something larger than ourselves, and do we experience literally the river of life that flows and carries us along. Control is an illusion, after all. We never really had it. All we can do is take a narrow vision of the world with the idea of control. And all we can do when we hit the lottery of what we try to control does work out that way is experience a small amount of gratification. But the next thing is around the corner and we're not in control of that either. It becomes quite hit and miss. It becomes quite difficult. Life becomes like a lottery. What are the odds of getting your outcome every single time? It becomes hard. It becomes stressful. And we lose so much of our energy. The ultimate lesson, the ultimate gift is surrender. Surrender is the complete acceptance of what is. It's the complete acceptance that it's not up to me, and it's the complete acceptance that things will reach their natural outcome with or without my input. And whatever that outcome is absolutely fine. To quote psychologist Nancy Collier, surrender at its core is the willingness to meet life as it is, to stop fighting with it or trying to change what it is right now. And remarkably, no matter what the catalyst, whether it's a moment's surrender or a lifetime's, the result is a gift that accompanies it and remains the same. Relief, gratitude, grace, and sometimes even joy. With no sign of any chance of being in control at any time soon, I do wish you that joy.